Okay, so Tenet. Where do we even start with this film? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Part-Time Watchers channel, where we talk about everything in the world of pop culture entertainment, movies, comic books, video games, TV shows, you name it, and we might talk about it part-time. Today, we are very excited to finally be talking about Christopher Nolan's Tenet. So anyone who has been following our channel for a while knows that we are huge fans of Christopher Nolan movies, and we have been super excited to get back into the theatre and watch this movie. Luckily for us here in Ireland, the theatres have reopened with social distancing and all that fun stuff, so we got the chance to go and check the movie out this weekend. Let's talk about it. From the very beginning of this movie, this is absolutely a Christopher Nolan movie. From the very opening action sequence, the loud, bombastic, in-your-face music, the amazing visuals, the practical effects that are there from the very beginning. There is no confusing this with any other director. This is absolutely Christopher Nolan through and through. We've seen other critics actually mention the fact that this movie is probably one of the most Christopher Nolan-y movies that any Christopher Nolan movie has ever been, and we could not agree with that statement more. To try and explain the plot of this movie is almost impossible, for one, without spoiling the film itself, but secondly, it would take me about 10 minutes to just properly explain how this movie works or what the plot of this movie is. It takes almost an hour into the movie before it even tells you as a viewer what the plot of the movie is, so we'll get to that section of the plot in a little bit. The idea of inversion as a storytelling tool is really used quite creatively in this movie, and it's really hard to wrap your head around while you're watching it. The idea that an object or a person is moving backwards through time while you are moving forwards through time. How do those two people or those two objects interact with each other and link in with each other and be in the same scene together? It's impossible to try and wrap your head around. And one of the things in the movie, very early on in the movie, when the lead character is talking to a scientist and they're trying to explain how inversion works, the scientist in the movie literally says, "Don't think about it too much." And I basically, as an audience member, took that as okay, we're not explaining it as much as we need to, so just get on board with it. And you kind of have to do that in a movie. If you try and overthink it, there's just so much going on that it is really hard to wrap your head around. But through having inversion as a plot point and as a plot thread in the movie, it leads to some very, very creative sequences, and they really do take advantage of it, that are just visually stunning. And in classic Nolan style, he shoots so much of this stuff practical that it feels real when you're watching it, even though you're looking at people that are going backwards while someone else is going forwards in time. And it's your mind explodes while you're watching it because you just can't figure out how they make it look so real. Having seen some of the behind the scenes from this, we actually know that Nolan literally had some of the actors train in doing a sequence in reverse, like doing a sequence forward and then doing it in reverse, so they could use both perspectives of it. So when you see someone on screen running in reverse, that is literally a person that was trained to run in reverse while someone else is running side by side with them in normal, like running normally while someone else is running reversing beside them. So even as a viewer watching it, it's mesmerizing because it's like nothing that we've ever seen on screen before. Another thing that's actually really, really interesting about this movie, and in classic Nolan style, he loves to play with time in movies. We've seen it in films like Dunkirk, in films like Inception, Memento of his, where different characters are at different points in time, or time works differently for different people in different scenes, but it all kind of melds together in the end. So it's kind of similar in this story and it's really interesting in the way that he uses it, where we see the same scene multiple times throughout the movie, but from different perspectives and different points in time. So at the beginning of the movie or midway through the movie, you see a scene where you're like, what in the name of God was going on in that part? Like, I just couldn't figure that part out. Later on in the movie, you see that scene again from a different character's perspective that is in a different point in time in the story. So all of a sudden, it makes more sense to you, or you understand it more. So they tried that a couple of times with a couple of different scenes throughout the movie, where it really just kind of made sense at the point when you see it. So there is a lot of times in this movie, especially in the first hour or first hour and a half even, where you're watching things and you're just thinking, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand what that was, or why they were doing that, or why this certain thing happened in the movie. And you do need to watch the entire thing and really be watching for little elements to pick up on what those parts are. And then finally, in terms of things that we just loved about the movie,
It's just visually beautiful. It's classic Christopher Nolan style. Like I said, you can tell this is a Christopher Nolan style from a mile away, or a Christopher Nolan movie from a mile away. It looks beautiful. The cinematography is amazing. The way that they shot some of the sequences with the use of inversion, but doing it practically, is just absolutely amazing. So, like I said, one of the main takeaways from this movie is that it is legitimately like nothing that we've ever seen on screen before, and that can't be seen as anything other than a positive. Now that we've looked at some of the things that we enjoyed about it, unfortunately with this movie, I think there's a lot of people that it's just not for. Like, it is not a movie for everybody. If you were to compare this movie to like learning how to use a new software, it is not user friendly at all. Like, it tells you the bare minimum you need to know, and it basically just drops you in the middle of the story. So if you're not interested in trying to figure out what is going on, then this is absolutely not the movie for you. While we were watching it, I'd say we were probably 45 minutes into the movie, almost an hour into it, and I remember turning to the person in the theater next to me, and neither of us had a clue what was going on. And I love Nolan movies. I love movies where you're trying to figure out what is happening. I love movies like Inception and Shutter Island and all these things where there's a lot of stuff going on where you're trying to figure it all out. This movie is like that on steroids. It is just like, you get nothing, you get thrown into it, and there's so much going on, and you're meeting new people all the way through it, and it's just like you need to grasp the concept very quickly, or at least be willing to be completely lost for about the first hour of the movie, because you're not going to have a clue what is happening. So looking at the plot in particular, again, without spoiling anything, it would be impossible to spoil without spending the next 10 minutes talking about it. But when you're looking at the plot, you're basically dropped into the story where we're following John David Washington's character, who, by the way, is only referred to as the protagonist. Like, throughout the entire movie, no one calls him his name. So that shows you how much character development there is in the movie, which I'll get to in a little bit. But in terms of the plot, you're basically dropped in with him, and you essentially, for the first 45 minutes, go from action sequence, meet a new person, loads of information dropped on you, action sequence, meet a new person, loads of exposition information dropped on you, action sequence, meet a new person, loads of exposition dumped on top of you. So you're just basically thrown into the middle of it, and all these people and characters that you're meeting aren't fleshed out. You're not told anything about them. You're not told anything about the character you're following in John David Washington's character. So you really just have to, you're just on board for the ride, really, watching it. It's not even like you know what's coming, or you're waiting to see what's happening. You're basically strapped onto the back of a roller coaster as a roller coaster flies through the air, and you're just kind of along for the ride, trying to figure out what the hell's happening. The whole concept of inversion as well, while it's an amazing concept, and while it leads to some visually stunning sequences, like I mentioned, and what I loved about the movie, it's also an awful head scratcher for a lot of the movie, where you see things happening, or you're in the middle of a scene, but you're still trying to figure out, like, okay, how is this happening, and which one is that, and who is this guy, and what's actually happening right now. Like, it really does. I feel like this is a movie that second time round you will enjoy and appreciate much more, because first time round, even though, yeah, sure, you get to the third act of the movie and a lot of it starts making sense looking back on it, that first hour in particular, and even like an hour and a half into it, you're just left scratching your head so often trying to figure out what's going on, that I feel like it's a real steep learning curve for a lot of people, and a lot of people are not going to be on board with it. Like movies like Inception and even Memento, which is a bit more complicated than Inception, I feel like it's more available for the large audience group to come in and watch and still enjoy. Whereas this one, I feel like a lot of people are going to be turned off by the first hour and a half in particular. So moving on to look at the actual characters that are in the film, and the actual character development. Well, development, I would put in inverted commas. So our lead character, John David Washington, if you look it up anywhere, in the credits of the film, he is only referred to as the protagonist. Legitimately no name, and there's no reason in the film that he doesn't have a name. He just doesn't have a name. No one refers to him as his name. It's not like it's this big secret they're trying to hold from you. He just literally doesn't have a name. He just seems almost like he's essentially just a CIA like robot that just does what he's told and kind of goes through the story because that's what the story needs him to do. And then even Robert Pattinson's character, he shows up about 15 minutes into the movie, and he's basically then the co-lead with our protagonist for the majority of the movie. But even with him, he just kind of shows up and he's just kind of there. Like, sure, he's charming and everything, but we don't really find out much about, like, did they know each other beforehand, or where does he come from, who's he working with. Like, he's purposefully mysterious, and we find out a little bit more as the film goes on. But again, there wasn't a whole pile in terms of actually developing that character into someone that you really cared about. And this for me then leads to what one of the major, I guess, issues I would have with the movie is that with all these films like that Nolan has done before in the past, where it's big spectacle and there's crazy stuff going on and messing with time and all that kind of stuff, there's always one or two characters that you're invested in, that you care about, that you want to see do well in it, which is why you kind of get on board with all the crazy stuff that's going on and why it makes these scenes so tense. Whereas in this movie, our lead protagonist doesn't even have a name, no backstory, no information about him. So in reality, I don't really care if he gets stuck in a bad situation or something bad happens to him. The only issue would be is that slows down the plot. Like, that's why you wouldn't want to see that. But I don't actually care about him as a character. And similar to Robert Pattinson's character, I mean, he was a little bit more charming and a little bit more that you'd want to like support him. He kind of had a bit more to him in terms of a character. But like, again, not enough that like I'm going to remember these two characters for years, or not enough that made me really get invested in the actual story. So overall, I didn't dislike the film, but it definitely didn't live up to what I was hoping it would be and what I was kind of expecting the Nolan film to be. In terms of visuals and spectacle, it has all of that, but in terms of like the actual plot and the characters that you're following, it's not really something that I'm going to remember in years to come. It definitely is a film I think I'm going to enjoy second time around even more, because similar to other movies where they have big plot twists and big ideas going on, when you rewatch them again, you kind of appreciate the filmmaking more. So I'm definitely looking forward to watching it a second time and really appreciating that, because first time around, you're just so confused with everything. And personally, that was just me and the people that I've seen it with. So, I mean, hopefully you go into it and maybe you just click with it and you just get it from the very beginning and you know what's going on. And more power to you if you are, but for me, that's just how I felt while I was watching it. Alrighty folks, so that brings us to the end of our review of Tenet. Now we want to hear from you guys. Let us know down below in the comments, have you seen the film? What did you think? What are some of your favourite parts of the film if you have seen it? Please, no spoilers for anybody that goes down to the comment section to check that out. And as always folks, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe down below for even more videos just like this, and we will see you in the next video.